Woohoo! Hello, y'all. My name is Jordan here at the Heroes Den. My name is Jordan again from Without Bounds, joined by the one and only
Morgan, hey, I am the soul.
Awesome.
So
Today,
today,
fam. Today, fam, we're just stumbling over each other here. Welcome to our new live stream. Welcome to another weekend. Thanks for joining us. Come on in. It's hot. I don't know what people, get welcome to when they come on into things, but come on in. Join us. Whether you're joining us live or you're joining us in the future. Today is going to be a fun one talking about statesmen, spies, lies, and some AI news. Today's going to be fun because there's a lot happening recently in our world that is, to me, very, I don't know, I wouldn't say like super groundbreaking, but it's the kind of thing where you're saying the quiet parts out loud, or you're, um, yeah, it's mostly just saying the quiet parts out loud that like have kind of been, circulating among independent media circles that maybe aren't part of the stream of the main. This is the live stream, and there is the mainstream, and there are many streams in this life, and sometimes we're not all tuned into them, let's just say, and sometimes we're tuned into others, and um, it can be cause for confusion among many of us when say like you're at a family discussion, and you're talking to your family, and your family's like, oh yeah, did you see what was on the news? And you're like, yeah, I got the same story but with like a completely different take on it. And it's not like just like a left or right thing sometimes, because when you're in independent media circles, you're kind of veering into these like very unconventional, unorthodox, or heterodox type of thinking, heterodox type of um, politicking. It's not just like I'm on the left, I'm on the right type of a deal. Because like at the end of the day, I don't think any of us, when you sit down and write down all the issues, probably most of us don't ever fit into neatly category. I mean, there are
that's
probably
only
a
because we're in the
people.
alternative media space, though,
Yeah,
realistically.
there are plenty of
I
people
would
who
watch
are cookie
yeah.
cutter. Yeah.
I mean, that's the entire function of the media, fundamentally, is to define the two sides that are exactly opposed on every issue and tell you what your opinion should be based on which of the two choices you've made. That's the function of, normal media. That's just how that goes.
So
And on that, I guess on that news, you want to bring up the first of the news stories as we
yeah,
dive
so like
into Statesmen.
before I spike the volleyball here, you know, among the mainstream, as far as I've been tracking it, it's hey, this person who runs the show, like he's effective, safe, competent. He is a grandpa of sorts. Like, he's got that old uncle vibe, I guess. And I guess that's the depiction that the frame, so to speak, of who this person is. But for whatever reason, his where's the share on all of this? Present. There's the button. Share screen. And
I think
sorry.
before you actually share that one, do me a favor, because this is
Yeah.
going to be worth it. Go to a new tab, just in Google, type in
Yeah.
Biden, and then share that.
All right. So, all right. I
Just
will
Biden.
share suspense. Hold on. Present, share screen. Share screen. Can I share the window? Sorry, guys. Forgive me while I'm still working out the kinks of learning how to do any of this.
I think I can share from my end. Here, let me do this in the meantime.
No, I found it. Entire screen. I got you. I got it.
Okay.
It's not letting me hit the button. Also share system audio. Yeah, of course. Whatever. It's not letting me share. I would have to select it.
Let me. You
I have
share
to
it on.
select it. Okay, there we go. We're good now.
Not yet. Hold on. I got to do something. I got to add it to the stage.
Oh,
there.
Infinite regression.
Cool.
All right, sweet.
And
So
go Biden.
I'm just gonna hit enter. Biden responds to special counsel report.
So that's interesting, actually. It's slightly different. Here, let me share mine, just because this is kind of fun. It's just showing the effects of the algorithms at play, I guess.
Yeah, what does it give you?
How old is too old to be president? An uncomfortable question arises again.
Arises again?
That's
Did
like,
it go away?
it's now in the New York Times, which I find interesting, right? I mean, this is something that is very recent, that this is a question that has made it to the level of the
yeah, someone picked up the phone and said, we can talk about it now.
Yeah, that does seem to, although I love how this Fox title, Dems one step closer to replacing Biden with Michelle Obama.
Oh, goodness.
Yes, yes.
Talk about a red herring.
And we've got neurologists weighing in, so at least they can tell us what we should think about it.
Oh, yeah. Biden's brains, safe and effective.
All right. I'll let you go ahead and take over sharing.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Jump into the good old Babylon Bee.
I don't think I ever stopped sharing.
Oh, add stage.
All right. Did you move me back to the now sharing screen?
Yeah, it's on. It's in the. I don't know if your view is any different, but yeah, you can. When you add it, you have to add it to the stage afterwards, so it'll actually share.
Yeah, well, I'm sharing my entire screen, so like I'm going to avoid being on that page right now. So I cannot see you. Keep that in mind. So essentially, this case was regarding what? The documents that he had in his garage next to his Ferrari, right?
Scroll up for the title.
Scroll up for the title, he says. Man ruled too senile to stand trial. Still fine to run country.
Yeah.
And I'm not here to take a stand either way. I'm here to just comment on the fact that it is kind of hilarious. That like we could just say this out loud now, I guess. That like his own Justice Department can like write this down on words that they hand to you and they say, well, this is what we've decided. And it's like, so this doesn't trigger like the 25th Amendment. Does this trigger anything that like would have like a structural response to him being too old? Like if he can't stand trial, like again, I know it's, it's very deadpan, still fine to run country. I get it. It's the Babylon Bee. Like we're not, pulling punches here with who this is. But
I mean, to be fair, they had previously made the point that one of his major achievements of 2023 was to reduce obesity in America by making food unaffordable. So there you go. Yeah, Babylon Bee definitely. They don't pull punches.
Yeah, they don't. But like, I guess to take a step back, it's like, okay, as you like, I'm sure you've watched some segments on this, and if you're just finding out about this, that Biden's own Justice Department ruled that he's too senile, effectively, to be put on trial for this, and I guess they're dismissing the case. Is what is my read on it.
Because charges wouldn't stick. Because it's like charging an insane person.
Yeah, because it's like charging someone who doesn't
have the mental faculties to understand what they did. Yeah.
So
that's interesting.
That is the leader of the free world. Take that as you will. Yeah, that it's kind of like it leaves you stunned. It leaves you stunned and in silence, where you're like, holy goodness, like the video of when he's like, America can be described in one word.
Yeah, I love that.
Although, you're like, do that again. Do that again.
So
You're
here's
like, you're kidding, right? This is a joke, right?
It's clearly, it's clearly an issue where we've got somebody who is past their prime in that hot seat. And seems to me that, likely that's going to be resolved in one way or another before too much longer, just, given that it's out there in the media, right? In the mass media that they're talking about it on both sides of the aisle. It's like, okay, so they're getting ready to do something about that. That's fine. But it is an interesting point nonetheless. If you have, so we've now very clearly framed what the leader of the free world looks like. And on the other side is where we go next, right? What is the contrast to this pillar of American masculinity and strength?
It's like the
You're not
pillar of
sharing now.
Hercules here.
Can you
No,
share
I know I'm
the?
not sharing now. I'm getting there. I'm getting there. I'm winding myself up here, friend. I'm winding myself up here. I'm just like, is it awe? Like, I'm in awe of like the contrast. I'm not saying that I'm in awe of either person. I'm just in awe of the massive contrast of like
Between
coherence and the ability to like articulate and string sentences together in words that like have meaning and
for the
direction
audience,
and
the contrast
intentionality
with the
for
Putin. You gotta
yeah
give them the Putin. We forgot to
yeah.
mention Putin. So
We're
by the
getting
way,
there.
the other statesman in question is Putin.
Is Vladimir Putin.
Yes. Okay.
Which by the way, just to kind of give you my take on this, is just like, I come from having grown up with Europeans who had a very nuanced, thorough understanding of geopolitical machinations. And I remember growing up, I had this one friend who, could just tell you who Putin was without any reservation, just was able to like zone in on the types of behaviors exhibited by this person. And what he explained to me all those years ago when we were like 14 at the time, he says, Jordan, Putin, he's not a madman. He's a calculated, cold, and just effective man. Not only that, but he's patient and he knows how to put on a show and he knows how to get what he wants.
So I guess I would say,
and he's in love with Russia.
Obviously. So for contrast, or so for the audience, for clarity around what we're talking about, Tucker went and interviewed Putin and put it out on his website, uncut and all that. There were quite a few elements to the conversation that were covered. And I think, I don't care what anybody else thinks about him. I want to make my own assessments based on, being able to have the information. I think so I appreciate that Tucker takes that approach. However, to get into the conversation in a rather nuanced way, I watched Robert Phoenix, who I love. He's great. The 11th House Astrology, I think, is his YouTube channel. In any case, Robert Phoenix did a pretty long discussion of it, of the interview, and one of the nuances that he brought to bear was kind of the effect, right? So it's obvious that there's a huge contrast between someone incompetent and someone highly competent, coming from particularly a special services, as he says, we would say CIA, Secret Service, whatever, an intelligence background, and then acting as a statesman on the world stage. And so that came through very clearly. And so for some people, I think Robert's point was that it's going to be a demoralizing effect, because it's like, wait, we could have this, but instead, we've got Biden, right? And even after Biden, it's a question of, where do you go from there? By the way, on your screen, you should be able to see where you brought the little thing in at the bottom. You have to click add to stage there. I've been pushing it for you, but so that's how you add it. You should be able to share.
Huh. I don't know if I'm seeing what you're seeing.
Let me see if I well, we'll do it another. We'll come back to it later. To continue on the thought, though. Okay, so Biden is this contrast to this figure here who's acting as the alpha male. The body language is clearly there. Tucker seems kind of outclassed, a bit outgunned.
Tucker's got his
deer in the headlights face.
No, what's the word? It's just like he does this all the time where he's just like, always just scowling like this.
I think it's a pensive look is what but I think the point
classic Tucker scowl
is that in the actual dynamics of the conversation, I mean, that was Putin giving a press conference. That was not Tucker getting the scoop from, of Putin. That was not Tucker leading any conversation. He asked him one question and then it led to 30 minutes of history for 2,000 years. Right?
Which was hilarious because he was like, let me break it down for you in 30 seconds to a minute.
And then 30 minutes later.
And you're like, okay, man, I see what you did there. How you just basically were like, and I'm grabbing control of this.
So I think the point, though, that I resonate with the strongest is kind of that downstream of a lot of, the initial thought that, hey, we've got, we could have a better leader. That's a shame. But then also the history is more complex than what we were fed. Okay, that's fine. And, at the end of the day, still you're kind of left with, wait, so we maybe aren't, by we, the US, the Western world, whatever, not acting as necessarily so cut and dried good guys, with, great motivation.
Did you catch Putin said this one phrase has had me like really incubating the last few days over it. He referred to the West as the golden billion.
Oh yeah, no, I thought about that as well.
And I was like, huh. I'm like, if you talk to some people on the streets here, in our neck of the woods, would you think for a second that they consider their lives golden? Maybe some for sure, but like there are some that like, out and about on streets and stuff like that. And you're like, yeah, I don't like.
That's the downstream effect of having a golden billion, though.
Yeah,
that's
I guess
my
so.
assessment is that perhaps there is a golden billion. It used to be a thing that meant a lot, but in order to facilitate the creation of that dichotomy that exists where you have centralized power, you have to steal it from all the other people that are not in the, group, right? By, destabilizing nations, whatever else, stealing their oil, etc. A lot of the many things that seem to have happened through history, right? That is, and in no way am I making any excuses for any of those behaviors, but by doing that, you create a system where instead of worldwide prosperity, where all boats rise, and then it's literally trying to create more for everyone, instead you create a system where you're trying to hoard, and as a result, all boats sink. And we're at the tail end of a couple hundred years of that type of philosophy. So it kind of makes sense to me that that's where we are. But I do think that we're also at a turning point in history where that's likely to shift in the other direction, where more, at least theoretically, egalitarian ideas should start to, propagate.
That is the hope. And like, it was interesting to me to hear it from, the horse's mouth. Putin says, I sincerely went to the West. I went to the Bushes. I went to Clinton. I said, I want to join NATO. I want Russia to be a part of this, like building a security faction in this world. Like, let's participate in this together. And to your point of like hoarding, it was like, well, no, like you're the goblin. Like you
have to have an enemy.
Yeah, you must.
Why even do all the security if there's no enemy states? Who are you putting all these billions in security for?
So if you're someone who's on the right, let's say, it might be that like you don't look at Russia as problematic. Maybe you look at other countries as problematic. And if you're on the left, you've been spoon-fed something else, and you think Russia is the baddie of baddies that like sways elections.
I guess I would say this. I don't think we can continue to characterize things in terms of left and right anymore. I really don't. I think that is a thing of the past. I think it's centralized and decentralized at this point. And I really mean that, because like the one party thing, it's if you're watching Fox or CNN, you're getting fed the same crap.
Yeah.
It's the same crap. It's the centralized authority, which is you should not think to think. You should think to be told what to thought, what to think, and just go with that, basically. So, but I agree on the back to the golden billion concept, or maybe back to the concept of interesting things that Putin said. One that struck me is, and okay, people either love or hate Tucker for the most part, but a lot of the people that love him, they suffer from the same type of hero worship with him as with anybody else, where the man can do no wrong, right? But at the end of the day, when he interrupted Putin too many times, Putin basically said, "Oh yeah, the CIA didn't have an alibi for the Nord Stream." And, Tucker was like, "Oh, yeah, haha, I have an alibi." And he said, the CIA didn't, the CIA that I think this was at that point in the interview. It's like, the CIA that you tried to join and they didn't accept you. It's a good thing they didn't too. But I was like, wait, what? So one, just if that's true, I don't know of Tucker having said that publicly before, even though he has alluded to potentially his past in law enforcement. But I think the point is that, there are a number of indications with him that, in the past have suggested his links to Freemasonry and or some high rank secret Mormon stuff based on like the secret handshake stuff he was doing with Alex Jones. But, it's kind of like there's something there that really does sort of reek of controlled opposition. And as a result, I'm not saying that he is. I don't think he is. But I think that that's, the effect of what you're doing will dictate how much reach you get. And if you are facilitating, as Brett Weinstein would put it, Goliath and Goliath's mission, which might be to, demoralize the West, this would be one more way to tell truth and yet still have the effect. And so that's why I think it's everywhere. And it's also another point upon which you can divide the people along lines.
It's very telling how, sorry to derail you there, but I think it's very telling how the quote unquote West is reacting. Among the elite of the golden billion, it's to downplay, it's to obfuscate, it's to outright say, you need to be banned from coming here.
Well, that's not the West. That's not the West. That's centralized power. Right? Because it's not a East versus West thing even. I really don't think so. I think that it's one captured state, one, that has a lot of actors from different parts of the world that still cling to the trappings of the nationalistic identities that they fraudulently help people build after drawing stupid borders that are not ethnically aligned. And then, with the movement of people and everything, right? So it creates this tense system. But fundamentally, if you look at the way that they act, it's difficult for me to say that, there really are multiple parties that are truly, somebody can be the good guy. Like, are we really looking at the freaking ex-assassin as the good guy? Like, really?
Yeah, no, I mean, I would never want anyone to walk away from listening to this that we're framing Putin as like some sort of moral, what is the word?
Paragon?
Moral paragon or something like that. Because that's not certainly my take and how I feel at the end of the day. Like, I do feel he's a sneaky snake in the garden, and like you got to watch out for them snakes. But at the same time, that doesn't mean that like when you're playing at that level, like, yeah, different countries have different interests, and should we be in control of everything? Like, is that how it's supposed to be, or are there ways to kind of delegate and to take ownership in our necks of the woods, and to also elevate? It's like, how much among the golden billion are having a good time? It's like, it's probably like the 0.1% of that billion, you know?
Yeah, but I don't know. I look at it this way. So to bring this back to a spiritual place for a minute, this whole ways you should run countries is a question of systems. It's a question of analytics. It's a mind thing. And because it's a mind thing, it will do nothing. You're not going to solve that problem as an individual. You're just not. Now, maybe your position in society is such that you will have an impact on it. But if you don't, spending your time on those thoughts derails you. I'm not saying you specifically here, obviously, but because I've thought about this through. It's like I've tried to solve the problems of the world. All of that is literally wasted effort for the most part for most people, because instead of doing that, you could be working on your own spiritual development such that you have the consequent effect of everybody around you, being improved a bit by it. And so that's why we have to be so cautious of these divisive things in particular, right? Because that's fundamentally the goal of the centralized authority is divide and conquer. It's always been that. It's, Sun Tzu had it right, and it hasn't changed since then. So you look at how Tucker divides and conquers, where you've got the fault lines along the political lines, right? You've got your left and right. You've got your, and that's a lot of what we're seeing in the media now.
And more independent versus.
And then now you've also got the independent centralized versus not. And he's putting himself forward as though he's not a centralized authority, just like Elon Musk does, despite the fact that all of his money comes from the government and he doesn't ever go up against the CIA. It's amazing how that happens. Anyway, so maybe transitioning then to the next topic. So we've covered Statesmen, and next is we touched on spies a little bit with obviously Putin's KGB background. But the other topic of conversation that they touched on was there's a spy that's being held in Russia, and it sounded like Putin's statesman type approach was basically let the CIA and the KGB talk, or FSB or whatever they are. In any case, the special services is how he refers to them. But I think the point was that instead of giving us actually any useful details that would have been, information, he just kept saying, "Oh, talk to your leaders," which I find probably the best insult he could have had. Ask your leaders why this is the question. It's like, why are you asking me? Why don't you ask your people? It's like, oh, wait, because they lie to us, and we know that, and that's the normal way. And the fact that you're making that point means that probably shouldn't be normal. Wow, that's awful demoralizing. Kind of back to that point, right? And so that's, it has that effect. So it's kind of, it's a bit of a nuanced thing, because it's like you ought to see it, so you have an awareness, but you also ought to be aware that there was a purpose behind it. And it's just like every other freaking thing seems to be the purpose of destabilizing and destroying the West.
Yeah, I mean, it's thick, man. It's thick, because the implications are, of this good guy, bad guy paradigm, because it's very comic booky for people. It has the potential to create lots of cognitive dissonance in those who think that like it is objectively like we are the good and we will always be the good. And it's like I love my country. I love being a part of this experiment, and it would be remiss of me to want it to fall apart. Or for the West to collapse, or for even for my peers to be demoralized, because it's like, hey man, like you have the power to it's like you always have to be the strongest link in your chain, and like recognize that you are part of the chain. Like you are, it's not imprisoning you. It's to show you that all is one. It's to show you that all is connected. And like, I did appreciate when Putin made it clear, like, hey, like we are one world, and like we. Like if we take it too far, we'll destroy it for all of us. And it's like, it's not worth it to destroy it for all of us. And
on the other hand, though, and on the note of spies, you've got on the one hand, I don't know the whole story, so we'll say, take it with a grain of salt, but basically it sounds like the Russians have a fairly young guy that was potentially posing as a journalist and receiving classified materials, and so he's in jail. But they want to trade him for a guy that was apparently in a city and murdered somebody because he viewed him as a war criminal. But it's kind of like, wait, so you got a guy receiving information and you want to trade him for a dude that murdered some other people. Like, wait, what? It kind of speaks.
Hey man, there are trade-offs. I
feel like you make that an equivalency when you're from the KGB. That's all I'm trying to say.
I have no idea how to like square that circle. Like, were I to have to,
I don't either, and that's why I'm not a statesman. But I guess my point is that so blatantly considering them to be equivalent things, someone who receives information and someone who murdered someone, like intentionally in cold blood.
is that what Putin wants in exchange? The murder?
Apparently, that was the context I got. I was like, oh wow, okay then. So
interesting.
Yeah. So that probably takes us through the spies. So you ready to transition to AI?
Which I find funny, because didn't AI come up in conversation at least a little bit? And it was like Putin, I don't remember what he was basically like, I can't even go there with you.
Yeah, he really didn't do, I think, a good job at really tackling that. But, it's
almost like the conversation could have gone like another hour, like there's part of you that's like, I wonder.
Well, it wasn't a conversation. It wasn't a conversation. It was Putin said what he wanted to say to the world. Yeah. And Tucker, I mean, as much as I absolutely think that we should be free to get the information, there is still some truth to Tucker giving a platform to Putin to say what he wants to say, because Tucker did not direct the conversation at all. Right.
I mean, Tucker asked questions. He asked questions. Was he supremely effective? I wouldn't go as far as to say he failed. I think that he interviewed him.
Okay, I would say, with respect to covering to the size and the scope of the opportunity that he had in front of him to get Putin's thoughts on a variety of issues, they covered very little. It was very pointed. It was very focused. It was very directed. And I think that the point was to demoralize America. That is not a fair interview. So in that case, do I think that Tucker was acting as a Russian actor? No. Do I think that Tucker had the effect in some cases? That's. Oh, sorry, my Siri's talking to me. Stop.
She's talking to you. She's not talking to us.
I don't know can you hear that?
No.
Okay, that's good. At least she's telling me she doesn't understand, and I'm like, okay, great. Shoot, I don't remember where I was now. Apologies.
So unprecedented $25 million AI heist.
Yes. Okay. So this is hilarious, and also terrible, but it just kind of speaks to where we are. So the next time you think to yourself, hey, I've seen it on video, it must be real. The answer is no. We've now reached the space where someone was able to use large language models and AI to basically pretend to be, they had a video conference with the CEO, the CFO, other senior officials from the company on video with deepfake technology. The scammers created highly realistic simulations of these individuals with accurate visual and vocal imitations in order to mimic key personnel in real time, in order to convince a targeted employee to give them $25 million, which they did and got away with. So that happened.
Oh boy.
Oh wow, I wonder if this is an Illuminati magazine.
Illumination's mirror.
I'm just throwing that out. That I just saw that.
I mean, it's on Medium. It's posted on Medium, which is
okay.
Pretty main, I would think.
Fair. All right, so that's that happened. Yeah.
So I mean, you've heard me say this. I've said this for years. Just because of my own background, having studied so much in personal development, it's like you come to a point where you're like, oh, there's just a lot of fakes out here. And like, not only are the people faking it, but the AI is faking it. And we've scaled the fake. Like we went from the age of the fake to the age of the deep fake. And now it's like we can scale our fakery and our fagazing. It is something to behold. The precision by which people can fake these days.
Yeah, no, it's wild. So I think though that is relatively niche for most applications right now. We'll see how that develops. But this thing, I think, is going to be something that's going to.
What the heck is this?
A lot of people. If you work on a computer for a living for a big company, now, and you get the whole cyber nanny thing and all that. They already can monitor your keystrokes and everything else. It's just that until now, at least, no one has ever really bothered. I've worked for a big company, and that was, it's like they don't have time for that, right? However,
Oh,
with
you
AI,
think?
the beautiful thing about AI is that stuff that would have been a manpower limitation no longer becomes a limitation if it's something that is repetitive and can be done. And so with AI's ability to do a variety of different tasks, this is something that I can only foresee growing. So I think that I think everyone is going to basically have to assume that every single thing that they do on their computer from now on, their boss is over their shoulder looking at it with them. Everything. And I mean, this also kind of points out, though, too, that realistically, that's probably the case even on your personal computer, too. It's just that you don't work for the company that has all the info on you, but they could still buy it if they wanted to. So this is, interesting, especially when you think about it in the context of how it might fit with, say, the social credit scoring system, how it might fit with, yeah, I don't even want to go any farther than that. We'll just say how it might fit within that system. This is terrible. This is just terrible. Yeah.
Well, it's word to the wise here, friends. It's, hey, if you belong to any of these organizations, we could say, be discerning as all heck. Be very mindful. Take things offline. It's like, just be very understanding that we have an ethic in our society that it used to be about privacy. It used to be about the right to not have things searched and seized. I don't know if it's been. I don't
have those things anymore.
I don't know if it's evaporated. I don't know if people just forgot about it. It's still kind of a Fourth Amendment.
I would actually take it in a much broader perspective than that. Let me derail you here for a minute, because I think fundamentally it's not about what you should do if you work for these companies. It's not about what you should do if you work for a company and you are foreseeing this coming to you someday, because it probably will, and it might be tomorrow. I don't think any of that matters at all. What is the bigger point here is that I think we have to forward operate in a world where everything you do online is monitored. We already are seeing this in every aspect of society, that everything you do online is monitored. Now, part of it seems to be that they want to make a literal digital homunculus of you for some reason. But aside from that,
the digital twin.
You have to sort of recognize that, okay, so if you're going to be monitored in everything you do, then just live your ethics. I think that might be part of what Aquarius is. That's part of why we link it to freedom and letting your freak flag fly and all that, right? It's
and being a rebel also, like,
exactly,
just
now
in the face of the crowd.
Well, it's kind of hard not to be a rebel when literally being anything other than a robot will make you a rebel. So we get to all be rebels without causes soon, or maybe with them. But maybe that's really the choice, though, is what cause do you want to rebel for? But I think the point in the context of being monitored in everything you do, I would say it is a fair statement that most people in the modern world have secrets, have skeletons in their closet, have a lot of things and behaviors that they do that they are ashamed of, and they do those things consistently. And this is going to be some trial by fire type stuff where your consistent bad behaviors that spill over into the online realm, at least, are going to be potentially on full display. So you got to decide what of your vices, what of your things like that are you maybe embarrassed about, are you willing to do anyway? Because maybe doing anything other than getting your weekly shot is opposed. Maybe anything. I don't know. I'm gonna leave it there on that one. But yeah.
Yeah, this is why when people are like, "Oh, what are your hobbies?" It's like staring at walls.
Navel gazing. Yeah, no, it's an interesting question though too, because I know that that's something that I personally I like to have some barriers in my life because I don't follow a lot of the typical sort of same ideas as a lot of my coworkers, and I shouldn't have to, and it's totally irrelevant to me doing my job. So I like to have those barriers as just a personal choice. But we are likely still moving into a world where that is maybe a bit harder to achieve without a lot more sort of effort on our end. Because like if the systems fail, then you have to build your own systems.
Well, it's also like, I think it's also a question of how much of your life becomes mediated by what some are calling now the profile personality. And it's like, someone like, such as me, who's not on like any of these social apps really. It's like I don't have a quote unquote profile personality. I have a discerning awareness of how to operate in spaces, but I wouldn't say that like there's like this bite-sized snapshot of me that you can like pick apart just by this, how I'm presented on an app or something. And
I
I'm
will say
like,
that's different though. That's a very nuanced conversation. As a creator, I think it's a very nuanced conversation because there is an aspect of you want authenticity. Sure. You want it to reflect you. Yes. But at the same time, you also want it to be on message. Part of branding is creating a pointed message where you're not giving them all of you. You're giving a small one-dimensional perspective that people can latch onto so that then they can find out if they want to go get more. So sometimes it's useful, sometimes it's important. The problem is that people assume that that's all there is. That is just people being stupid. But that's not the truth of it, right? They're literally ignorant. I mean, there's a difference in you familiar with the concept of nescience?
you'll have to.
So this
I
is
mean, I've
something that
heard
I've
of it,
stripped
but
from our language. It's absolutely ridiculous if this is a term that virtually nobody knows. So nescience is just to not know something. Ignorance is to choose not to know something. The knowledge is available. You've chosen to make yourself stupid and ignorant. That's what that means. We use them interchangeably. It's wrong. But that's important because if you think about it, the centralized authority would love for you to assume that it is the same thing not to know something as it is to be closed-minded and not want to learn something that is available to you. And that's a perfect way to have a philosophy in a modern world where information is readily available. And that's where concepts like conspiracy theory comes into play.
looking into it or
Right? Well,
ask questions.
you train people to not ask questions on topics that you have deemed untouchable by associating everyone who has anything to do with that topic as being people that you would classify as crazy. So you've got the establishment machine working to classify people as virtually untouchables in this kind of a realm. And my thinking there is that it's a machine, right? It's acting in the way that a machine does. It's just the system at play,
Or it's a hive. Like it's also it's a hive of people that like are from the top down, from the center out, are disseminating a thought form, a policy, a dictum, whatever it is, much like a papal decree kind of a deal.
Yeah, but I don't necessarily know that there is a pope now in the structure of the real power of the world. I think it is clear that there is a centralized authority. And having seen this at play in my professional career, some of the most high people in the biggest companies just seem to be piloted by an egregore, frankly. And so for those of you who don't know, an egregore is a thought form sort of made manifest. It's the kind of thing where people talk about like getting, like the download, like say from They Live is a great movie where you've got a radio station pumping out a signal, and that signal for certain people, it just like, it changes what they see. It changes how they see the world, right? It hides certain things from them. And it's like, that's very much the vibe of defining things as topics you can't touch. because otherwise you'll be in a bad category of people that we don't want to associate with. But it's amazing.
Well, this
because
harkens
it's a
back
trick.
to your initial statement about the mainstream, is that there is a top down. I mean, maybe it doesn't seem like the top, but there is a prescribed way of viewing.
There's a center out, but I think here's the important nuance. In, say, truther level 1, people are like, the Rothschilds did it.
Yeah.
Right. And then they kind of stop there and they're like, it's all the Rothschilds. It's all George Soros. It's all the insert group here, insert person here. Yeah. And there are certainly bad actors, don't get me wrong. And there are people that have disproportionate amounts of authority. And there probably are secret groups of bloodline families, yada, yada, yada. Okay, sure. But I think realistically, that's not necessary at some level for us to have the system that we have. And assuming that that is the case, I think on the one hand gives them too much power, and then and takes it away from yourself in order to do that, which is just foolish. But then I think the other piece of it is that it's not necessary, and you start to get the wrong conclusion. So for example, people say, never assume malice when stupidity will suffice, right, as an explanation. And a lot of the time that's true, but we also live in a society where the most evil people pretend to be innocent, pretend to be victims, and use the most attacked tactics anytime.
Or it's the green is good type of thing, where it's inverted. It's like, hey, the vice is the virtue.
That's
more of the vice is the virtue.
That's part of it. But I think that, we do see broadly, it's the people that are playing the victims at all levels in society and using that as a card to manipulate the actions and tell other people what they should and shouldn't do. When they, some of that is like a real victimhood. But for the most part, I think what we see on the world stage is not that. It's people taking advantage, in order to manipulate other people to do what they want them to do. And fundamentally, because of that, it's like all of these issues are built such that there is something there that you would want to support potentially, but the net effect is always divisive. And so that's why it's like, okay, is it really worth taking a strong position on any of these things? Maybe not. It's worth understanding the source of them, though. It's worth understanding that centralized versus decentralized place of being, so that way you can be empathetic to understanding the consequences of the people getting, the downloads, the brainwashing, and then also seeing, based on what they're trying to say, what direction they might be taking things. Because I think that's also part of it. And actually, on that note, so Super Bowl coming up. I know it's not part of our big planned conversation. I'm not a sports person, but I will say there's been a lot.
I don't play sports ball either, for the record.
There's been a lot of talk lately about T Swift, and not to get into that really at all. I just wanted to note that the other Swift is the Swift banking system. And the Swift banking system needs to be replaced in order for a centralized digital bank currency, CBDC, to be rolled out. Or really anything in the crypto space. At the end of the day, they need to replace the Swift system. It's slow. It's not up to the latest, and so they need to kill the Swift system. So world stage spell. We'll see what happens at the Super Bowl. But it's just interesting to me that there's so much talk about Swift in multiple areas of life at the moment. And so we'll see how it plays out, but I wouldn't be surprised if there's something newsworthy in that event specifically related to the Super Bowl. I don't have any specific predictions.
I mean, the halftime show is like, everybody's always up in arms about it, or they're like.
Well, I don't think she's performing though, right?
Oh, I have no idea.
I don't think she is. I think she's just going to be there.
I can barely keep.
What's his face?
Goes to show what I know. I thought she was performing.
No, I think the whole point is that she's there because she's dating Travis Kelce, who's the tight end.
Oh, who cares then? I said it.
Literally everyone. My point is, I don't care about her. I don't care about the sports. I don't care about anything other than the fact that her name is in the news. And it's something that is absolutely needs to be happening now. And it's aligned in very similar ways to some of these other things like the Titan sub. There's connections between concepts that maybe we'll see. So we'll see. I just wanted to put it out there that let's see what happens in the news if there's anything specific related to her at the Super Bowl, because that would fit with a narrative that is leading in a direction towards CBDCs, which I think our national narrative is broadly leading towards. So we'll see. I might be wrong. I mean, I wouldn't guarantee it, but there's a lot of overlapping concepts happening here. That
It's just, to me, it's just where's the bait and switch. That's really it.
Yeah. Well, so gambling is a big thing. I'm certainly not going to gamble. But I think they've already broken records. So sports betting is like a huge thing. There was some recent issue or some guy got in trouble because he had like 8,000 bets or something ridiculous. And he lost his NFL career because he was betting as a college person with his own name. It was really stupid. He was in college ball. So that was a thing in the news. But big stuff related to gambling is in the news.
Okay.
And I think they already broke records for sports betting, which I thought was illegal. Like, apparently.
No, it's popping up everywhere now. It's kind of becoming a thing.
I don't really know how that works, but because, I mean, even in
States
Colorado,
kind of
there's like a
regulate
couple of
it.
little cities where you can gamble. You can't, other than lottery, you can't really gamble anywhere else. So it's weird to, yeah. Anyway, online
Strange
gambling.
vice. Strange vice.
Yeah.
Money.
So, in any case, that's we'll see how that plays out the next few days. And what else? Did we have any other topics that we wanted to cover?
No, I mean, I'm trying to go to the bathroom, but I don't know how to like escape like reasonably from these things where it's like,
I think the point is not to say I need to go to the bathroom. I think that's step one.
Who cares? Who cares? Like,
so
Joe Rogan can tell you he needs to take a piss.
Is to say, okay, cool. At this point, I think we have covered our scope that we were hoping to touch on today. Hope our audience has enjoyed our somewhat fumbling and hopefully entertaining efforts as we discuss these things. And otherwise, yeah, we can we'll call it for today and catch back up soon.
All right, man. Sounds wonderful. Thank you again. And signing off here, Jordan from Without Bounds, friends. Ciao, ciao.
Thanks, y'all. I'm the soul.